The billionaire had always believed his life was perfectly controlled, every meeting, every investment, every relationship calculated down to the last detail. But on the stormy night when his fiancée suddenly collapsed in the private penthouse hallway, clutching her stomach and begging the maid, "Don't call him, please, don't tell him," everything changed. Blood stained the marble floor. The maid, Elena, trembling, rushed to help her into the guest room, only to watch the woman give birth to a baby she had been hiding for 9 long months. The cries of the newborn echoed through the mansion like a secret finally breaking free. And as the fiancé whispered, "He can never know, he would destroy me," Elena felt her heart freeze. Because she knew the truth, the baby didn't just belong to the billionaire. The baby was the reason the fiancé planned to betray him. And Elena was the only witness. Before we dive any deeper into this story, I want to ask you something. Which city are you watching from? Drop your city in the comments, whether it's New York, Los Angeles, Houston, Miami, Chicago, Atlanta, or anywhere across the USA or the world. I always love seeing where my viewers are tuning in from. And if you're new here, make sure to subscribe before we continue, because what's about to unfold is one of the most shocking stories you'll ever hear. Now let's go back to the night everything changed. Billionaire Aidan Blackwell believed he had finally found stability, a perfect fiancée, a perfect life, a perfect future. Victoria was stunning, poised, admired at every charity event and gala. Their engagement announcement became the headline of every lifestyle magazine. To the world, they were the dream couple. But perfection has cracks if you look close enough. Victoria hid hers behind expensive gowns, carefully planned schedules, and strategically staged public appearances. No one questioned her sudden mood swings, her disappearing acts, or her tightly guarded appointments. No one imagined she was carrying a secret, literally. Except Elena, the maid who had served Aidan for nearly a decade. She was quiet, observant, and far more perceptive than Victoria ever realized. Elena noticed the mornings Victoria rushed to the bathroom, the nights she cried behind locked doors, and the subtle tremble in her hands whenever Aidan mentioned their future children. Still, Elena stayed silent, until the night everything collapsed. A storm raged outside. Victoria collapsed inside the penthouse. And in a single, terrifying moment, the secret she'd hidden for 9 months came crashing into the world, a baby she never intended Aidan to know about. And Elena was the only witness. The storm outside hammered against the massive glass windows of the Blackwell penthouse, thunder shaking the sky as if the world itself sensed the secret about to explode within those walls. Elena had just finished polishing the grand staircase when she heard a sharp gasp, a sound so raw, so panicked, that it sliced through the thunder like a blade. She rushed toward the hallway and froze when she saw Victoria, the billionaire's flawless, elegant fiancée, collapsing against the marble floor. Her designer dress clung to her body, soaked in sweat, her face pale and twisted with pain. "Don't call him," Victoria whispered through clenched teeth, grabbing Elena's arm with surprising force as another wave of agony hit her. Elena's heart raced. She had suspected something for months, the sickness, the sudden changes, the locked doors, but she had never imagined this. Not like this. "Miss Victoria, you need a doctor," Elena urged. But Victoria shook her head violently, eyes wide with pure terror. "If Aidan finds out, I'm finished." Before Elena could respond, Victoria's body convulsed, and a gush of fluid hit the floor. Time stopped. The truth was undeniable. She wasn't just in pain. She was in labor. Elena felt her breath catch as she guided Victoria into the guest bedroom, a room rarely used, its silence now filled with Victoria's desperate cries. "Please," Victoria begged, gripping the sheets so hard her knuckles turned white. "No one can know. Not him. Not anyone." Elena, trembling but determined, grabbed towels, blankets, anything she could find. She had never delivered a baby before, but Victoria's condition was too critical to wait for help. Minutes felt like hours as Victoria screamed into the mattress, tears streaming down her face. And then, the air shifted. A faint but unmistakable cry pierced the silence. A tiny, fragile sound that seemed too small to hold such devastating power. Elena lifted the baby, weak, premature, but alive, and wrapped him gently in a towel. Victoria turned her head away, refusing to look at the child she had hidden for 9 months. "Take it away," she cried, her voice bitter and shaking. "Take it away before he sees. Before anyone sees." Elena stared at her in disbelief. "Miss, this is your baby. He'll destroy me if he knows." Victoria sobbed. "He'll ruin everything, the marriage, the inheritance, the company's board position, everything." Elena's hands shook as she held the child, his tiny fingers curling weakly around the edge of the towel. She had seen Victoria act cold before, dismissive, demanding, manipulative at worst, but this was different. This was darkness. "Aiden deserves to know," Elena whispered before she could stop herself. Victoria's head snapped toward her, eyes burning. "If you tell him, you're done. I will make sure of it." She wasn't threatening, she was promising. Elena looked down at the newborn. He was so small, so innocent, his chest rising and falling with soft, uneven breaths. He didn't ask to be born in secret. He didn't ask to be hidden like a shameful mistake. And he certainly didn't deserve to be tossed aside in fear of what the truth might break. But Elena knew Victoria wasn't finished. Secrets like this don't stay buried, they rot, they grow, they destroy. As she cleaned the blood from the floor and wrapped the baby in a blanket, Victoria reached out weakly and grabbed Elena's wrist. "Listen to me," she whispered, desperation dripping from every word. "If Aiden finds out this child exists, he'll leave me. The world will know everything, my past, my mistakes, the scandal. I can't let that happen. I need you to help me. Please." Elena felt a war raging inside her. On one side was her loyalty to Aiden, the man who had treated her with kindness for 10 years, who paid for her mother's surgery, who made sure she had a home, a future, a life. On the other was Victoria, broken, terrified, and begging with shaking hands. And in the middle of it all, the baby. The thunder roared outside, lightning flashing through the windows as Elena held the crying child close. His tiny heartbeat trembled against her chest. He didn't know who his father was. He didn't know the lies wrapped around his birth. But Elena knew. And she knew this truth wouldn't stay hidden forever. Not with a child involved. Not with a billionaire who hated secrets. As Victoria drifted into exhaustion, her breathing uneven, Elena rocked the baby gently. Something inside her shifted, a quiet decision forming like a flame in the dark. She couldn't let this baby disappear into the shadows. She couldn't play along with Victoria's lies. Because this wasn't just a scandal. This was a life. And Aiden Blackwell had a right to know his blood, his child, his truth. But revealing it meant betrayal. And keeping silent meant becoming part of a lie that would one day explode. Elena looked toward the closed penthouse door, where Aiden would soon return from his business trip, unaware that his entire world had changed in a single night. She swallowed hard. One decision. One secret. One baby. And the clock was already ticking. The hours that followed were a blur of panic, whispered arguments, and the quiet, fragile breaths of the newborn who had entered the world under a storm of lies. Elena sat in the dim guest room, cradling the baby as Victoria slept, if it could even be called sleep. Her face was pale, her breathing shallow, her body drained from the shock of an unplanned, hidden delivery. Outside, dawn slowly painted the sky, the last thunder rolls fading into silence, but inside the penthouse, the chaos was only beginning. Elena checked the time, 6:42 a.m. Aiden's flight from Hong Kong was scheduled to land within the hour. He'd texted her yesterday, asking her to make sure the penthouse was warm and welcoming when he came home. How ironic, she thought, the home would be warm, but the truth waiting for him was colder than ice. The baby stirred in her arms, letting out a weak cry that sent a chill down Elena's spine. She carefully stood and walked toward the bathroom to fetch warm water, but before she could step inside, Victoria's voice rang out, weak but sharp as a blade. "Where is it?" she demanded, pushing herself upright on the bed. Elena hesitated. "He's right here." "You need to rest, I need to think," Victoria snapped, her hand trembling as she wiped sweat from her brow. "We don't have time, Elena. His plane lands soon." Elena swallowed hard. "Miss Victoria, he deserves to know." Victoria's eyes blazed. "If he finds out, everything falls apart. The tabloids will destroy me. The board will remove me. Aiden will never marry me." Her voice cracked, not with guilt, but with fear of losing the empire she had fought to attach herself to. Elena had seen this before. Victoria cared about two things, power and her image. Love was nowhere in the equation. Before Elena could respond, the elevator chimed, soft, elegant, unmistakable. Elena froze. Victoria went pale. "He's early," she whispered. Elena's heart jumped into her throat. She clutched the baby tighter as footsteps echoed across the penthouse floor, each step heavy, confident, and impossibly close. She hurried into the closet room, gently placing the baby in a soft laundry basket lined with blankets. She prayed the child would stay quiet. Then she returned to the hallway just as Aiden came into view. Tall, sharp-jawed, impeccably dressed even after a 14-hour flight, Aiden Blackwell radiated power effortlessly. "Elena," he greeted warmly. "Good morning. You're here early." Her hands shook behind her back as she forced a smile. "Welcome home, sir." Aiden walked toward the living room, dropping his suitcase near the sofa. "Where's Victoria?" "She said she wasn't feeling well last night." Elena's breath caught. His tone wasn't suspicious. He sounded concerned, even affectionate. If he discovered the truth now, Victoria bleeding, the baby hidden in the next room, everything would erupt into a war Elena had prayed to avoid. "She's resting, sir." "She had a long night," Elena replied carefully. "She shouldn't be disturbed yet." Aiden nodded slowly, but something in his expression shifted. He wasn't a fool. And he could sense tension like a shark senses blood in the water. "Is everything all right?" he asked quietly. Elena opened her mouth. But the baby cried. A soft, thin, heartbreaking cry that traveled through the hallway like a ghost announcing itself. Aiden stopped mid-step. His eyes sharpened. His entire body froze. Was that a baby? Elena felt her heart slam against her ribs. Sir, I. But Aiden was already moving. He walked toward the guest wing, following the sound with long, focused strides. Elena rushed after him, panic choking her throat. He pushed open the closet room door, and the world stood still. There, in a basket of soft blankets, lay a newborn baby boy. Red-faced, fragile, crying quietly, his little fists curled. Aiden's face drained of color. First confusion. Then shock. Then disbelief so deep Elena thought he might collapse. He whispered, barely audible, "What is this?" Before Elena could answer, Victoria appeared in the doorway, one hand gripping the wall for support. She looked like a ghost, pale, trembling, terrified. "Aiden, wait, let me explain," she said, voice cracking. Aiden turned toward her slowly, his expression unreadable. "Explain what?" he asked, his voice calm in a way that was far more dangerous than anger. Victoria moved closer, tears streaming down her face. "I was scared," she whispered. "I didn't know how to tell you. I didn't want to ruin us. I didn't want you to think I betrayed whose child is this? Aidan demanded, his voice cutting through the air like a thunderclap. Victoria's lips quivered. It's, she didn't finish. She didn't need to. The silence spoke for her. Aidan's eyes widened, the truth crashing into him with brutal force. It's mine, he whispered. Victoria broke into sobs. Elena felt tears rise in her own eyes, not for Victoria, but for Aidan. In one moment, his entire future had shifted. His fiancée had hidden his child from him. She had planned to keep it secret. She had given birth behind closed doors. And if Elena hadn't been there, the child might not have survived the night. Aidan stepped toward the baby, his hands trembling as he reached into the basket and lifted him gently. The baby quieted almost instantly, as if recognizing a piece of himself in the man holding him. Aidan stared down at the infant, his tiny nose, his delicate breaths, his barely open eyes. Something inside him broke. And something else awakened. He looked up at Victoria, his voice shaking with betrayal. You hid my son from me. Victoria sobbed harder. I was scared you'd leave, I would have protected you, Aidan said, tears shining in his eyes. I would have protected him. But you chose to lie. He held the baby closer, as if shielding him from her. Victoria took a desperate step forward. Aidan, please, just listen. No, he said, stepping back. You've said enough. Elena watched silently, clutching her hands to her chest, realizing the truth of the moment. A mother had lost everything, and a father had just gained the most precious thing he never knew existed. Aidan took a long, steady breath. Elena, he said softly, still staring at the child. Pack her things. Victoria gasped. Aidan, no, please, but Aidan didn't look at her. His focus was only on the newborn in his arms. From now on, he said, voice firm, my son stays with me. And all eyes end today. Elena felt the air shift, like the dawn of a storm even bigger than the night before. Because the truth was out. And the fallout was just beginning. News travels fast in high society, but scandals spread like wildfire, especially when they involve a billionaire, a hidden baby, and a shattered engagement. Within 24 hours of Victoria's expulsion from the penthouse, the story had already leaked in fragments. Paparazzi spotted her leaving the building in tears, her designer coat barely draped over her, makeup smeared, hair disheveled. Cameras flashed, reporters shouted, and though no one knew the full truth, the city sensed something explosive had happened. Meanwhile, inside the Blackwell mansion, everything felt eerily still. Aidan remained in the nursery for hours, refusing to let anyone else hold the baby except Elena. He didn't trust anyone, not after the betrayal that had nearly cost him his child's life. When the baby's tiny fingers wrapped around his thumb, Aidan felt something break inside him again, but this time it wasn't pain, it was purpose. News vans parked outside the gates. Gossip pages ran headlines like, Victoria Montgomery in tears, what is she hiding, and, Blackwell family drama, trouble in paradise. Some speculated infidelity, others assumed a secret breakup. A few guessed she was pregnant, but none imagined she had actually delivered a full baby inside the penthouse without anyone knowing. Meanwhile, inside the mansion staff's private quarters, whispers broke out among employees. The chef had overheard Elena rushing for towels. The security guard had seen Victoria doubled over but assumed it was stress. The housekeeper had found a stained blanket in the laundry chute without explanation. Now they gathered in hushed corners, piecing together fragments until their whispers became a quiet storm. Why would she hide a baby? Does Mr. Blackwell know? Is it even his? These questions echoed through the halls, filled with sympathy for the baby, but judgment for Victoria. Aidan called an emergency meeting with his legal team, medical staff, and private security. Elena stood silently in the room, clutching the baby's birth blanket, her nerves buzzing with fear and guilt. She never wanted to be part of a scandal, but she was now the only eyewitness to the truth. The lead attorney, a stern woman named Marissa Hale, adjusted her glasses. "Mr. Blackwell, if the child is yours, we need immediate paternity testing to secure legal custody and protect him from any future claims or interference." Aiden nodded, jaw tight. "Do it. And make sure none of this leaks." But leaks had already begun. Not from Elena or Aiden, but from the city's elite. By afternoon, Aiden began receiving calls from friends, investors, board members, and even distant relatives. Some expressed support. Others questioned his judgment. One board member even dared to say, "A child born in secrecy looks suspicious, Aiden. We need to manage the narrative." Aiden ended the call mid-sentence. He didn't care about narratives. He cared about the fragile life sleeping in the next room. Victoria, however, was drowning. The media caught her at a hotel lobby, her face streaked with tears as she tried to fight through the cameras. Overnight, she went from beloved socialite to whispered disgrace. Instead of admitting the truth, she told the press she had been emotionally manipulated, painting herself as a victim without revealing why. But the public didn't buy it. Her friends, women who once clung to her at charity galas, distanced themselves. The board of her own family's foundation pressured her to step back temporarily, for the sake of stability. Community outrage surged when a leaked medical report, anonymous but unmistakably connected, stated that she had given birth without notifying the father. Parents online attacked her ruthlessness. Blogs called her the Ice Queen Mother. Talk shows debated her mental health. Yet she remained silent, terrified that revealing the truth would cement her downfall forever. Back at the mansion, Elena became the center of quiet admiration. Staff whispered that she had saved both mother and child, that she had shown loyalty when no one else would have. Some praised her bravery, others pitied her involvement. But Elena felt no pride. She felt torn, between her loyalty to Aiden and the memory of Victoria clinging to her, begging her not to expose the truth. Elena couldn't deny what she witnessed. Victoria had been terrified, shaking, on the verge of collapse. That kind of fear wasn't simple selfishness. Something deeper was hiding beneath her panic. That disturbing thought grew heavier when a nurse arrived for a private health check and quietly pulled Elena aside afterward. Victoria's condition, she must have hidden her pregnancy for psychological reasons, the nurse said. Her trauma is severe. Women don't conceal pregnancies like that unless something terrible is forcing them to. Elena's stomach twisted. What trauma? What secret? As evening fell, Aiden approached Elena with the baby in his arms. "He needs a name," he said softly. Elena smiled sadly. "He deserves one." But before Aiden could speak, the intercom buzzed sharply, startling them both. Security announced, "Sir, Victoria Montgomery is at the gate. She's demanding to speak with you." Aiden stiffened. Elena froze. The baby whimpered. The staff exchanged fearful glances. Still holding his son, Aiden walked toward the security monitors. He stared at the screen, jaw clenched. Victoria stood outside in the rain, drenched, mascara running, eyes wild with desperation. Reporters hovered behind her like vultures. She wasn't here for redemption. She wasn't here for sympathy. She was here for something else, something urgent, something terrifying. She pressed her hands to the gate and shouted through the camera's microphone, "Aiden, please, let me in. You don't understand. Someone was trying to take the baby from me." Aiden's world froze. Elena covered her mouth. Someone was trying to take the baby? Who's someone? Why? And suddenly, the outrage of the world didn't matter. The whispers didn't matter. The scandal didn't matter. Because if Victoria's terrified confession was true, Aiden and his newborn son were in far more danger than anyone had imagined. The rain hammered violently against the iron gates as Aiden stared at Victoria on the security monitor, her drenched figure trembling, her voice breaking through the speaker with a desperation he had never heard from her before. Elena stood behind him, clutching the baby's blanket so tightly her knuckles turned white. "Someone was trying to take the baby from me," Victoria repeated, her voice cracking under the weight of fear. For a moment, no one moved. Aiden, still holding his son, felt a cold shiver crawl down his spine. He had assumed Victoria's secrecy came from selfishness, pride, and image obsession. But the terror in her voice now was real, too real to be an act. Finally, he spoke. "Let her in." Security hesitated, but one nod from Aiden was enough. The gates swung open, and Victoria stumbled through, nearly collapsing until Aiden caught her. She flinched when she saw the baby in his arms but didn't reach for him. Instead, she whispered, "They're watching me, watching us." Aiden guided her inside as Elena rushed ahead to warm blankets and call the doctor. When Victoria finally sat on the couch, shivering, drenched, and shaking, Aiden stood in front of her, holding their child protectively. "Victoria," he said slowly, "tell me exactly what you mean." She swallowed hard, her breath trembling. "I didn't hide the pregnancy because of my reputation, or because I didn't want you to know. It was because someone threatened me," she said, voice barely above a whisper. "Threatened to take the baby the moment he was born." Elena gasped. Aiden blinked. "Who?" he demanded. Victoria shook her head desperately. "I don't know their name. But they sent letters, anonymous, untraceable. The first one came right after I found out I was pregnant. It said, 'Blackwell heirs don't belong to their mothers.' I thought it was a joke, until more letters came. And then someone broke into my old apartment." Aiden felt the blood drain from his face. "Why didn't you come to me?" Victoria laughed, a small, broken sound. "Because they threatened to kill you if I did." Silence swallowed the room whole. Elena felt a chill settle deep in her bones. Aiden stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Victoria, why target our baby?" Victoria looked up at him with hollow eyes. "Because the Blackwell fortune doesn't just attract investors. It attracts enemies." She paused, trembling. "Aiden, you know how many families hate yours. How many people believe the Blackwells destroyed their companies, took their land, ruined their futures. Your father's business decisions made enemies that lasted generations. Someone wants revenge. And they wanted it through our child." Aiden's jaw tightened, memories flashing in his mind, hostile takeovers, lawsuits, threats swept under corporate rugs, investors who lost millions. But using a newborn? That was beyond revenge. That was cruelty. Before he could respond, the security chief, Reed, entered the room. "Sir," he said urgently, "there's something you need to see." Aiden handed the baby carefully to Elena and followed Reed to the monitoring room. Reed played footage from the gate's camera from 20 minutes earlier. The video showed Victoria standing alone, until a dark SUV slowed down near the gate. The tinted window rolled down just 2 inches, enough for a camera lens to peek out. A photograph was taken, not of Victoria, but of the penthouse windows. Then the car sped away. Aiden felt his stomach twist. Someone wasn't just watching Victoria. They were watching his home. Watching his son. "Run plates," Aiden ordered. "We tried," Reed replied. "The car is using stolen registration. Whoever this is, they're professionals." Aiden exhaled slowly, rage boiling beneath his skin. "Increase security tenfold. I want guards on every entrance, cameras updated, alarms checked, and nobody steps foot inside this property without clearance." Reed nodded and rushed out. Aiden turned to Elena, who was rocking the baby gently. He suddenly felt the fragility of everything, his newly discovered fatherhood, the child itself, and the danger lurking beyond the gates. When he returned to the living room, Victoria sat with her hands shaking. "I tried to tell you," she whispered. But every time I tried to leave, someone followed me. When I saw the car last night, I panicked. I ran here because it's the only place they wouldn't dare enter." Elena, despite everything, felt a pang of sympathy. Victoria had made terrible choices, but the fear in her eyes now was something else, something real. Aiden sat opposite her, choosing his next words carefully. "Victoria, if someone was threatening you, why hide the baby in the penthouse? Why not go to authorities?" Victoria looked down. "Because they said if I told anyone, they'd take him first." Aiden closed his eyes, anger and heartbreak tangled inside him. His son, his tiny, innocent son, had become a target before even taking his first breath. Victoria continued, voice trembling. "I wanted to protect him. I thought if no one knew I was pregnant, no one could hurt him. I thought hiding him meant saving him." She looked at Elena. "I didn't want to burden you. I didn't want to involve anyone." Elena blinked back tears. "Victoria, you almost died. He almost died." Victoria nodded weakly. "I know. And the moment the contractions started last night, I knew I couldn't hide anymore. The moment I collapsed, I thought it was over." She looked at Aiden with raw regret. "I'm sorry. For everything." Aiden didn't respond immediately. He looked at his son, sleeping peacefully in Elena's arms, unaware the world outside wanted to steal him away. When Aiden finally spoke, his voice was steel. "Victoria, we are not just dealing with a scandal. We are dealing with a threat." Victoria's lips trembled. "I know. And you are going to tell me everything," Aiden continued, leaning forward. "Every letter. Every incident. Every detail. If someone wants to hurt my son, they will go through hell to reach him." Victoria nodded, wiping tears. "I'll tell you everything." But before she could begin, Reed burst back into the room, breathing hard, his face pale. "Sir," he said, voice unsteady. "You need to see this immediately." Aiden followed Reed to the main monitoring screen. Reed clicked a button, showing footage from moments earlier. A drone hovered outside the baby's nursery window, its camera pointed directly inside. The drone zipped away as soon as guards rushed outside. Aiden's blood ran cold. This wasn't a threat. This was surveillance. And whoever wanted the baby had just taken the first step to get him. For hours after the drone incident, the mansion simmered with tension thick enough to taste. Security patrolled every hallway, every entry point, every shadow. Elena held the baby close, her nerves frayed, while Aiden paced the study, fists clenched, jaw tight, fury burning beneath his calm exterior. Victoria sat curled on the sofa, shivering under a blanket, replaying the drone footage in her mind over and over until nausea twisted her stomach. Someone wasn't just watching, they were preparing. Every second, every move, every heartbeat felt like the countdown to something bigger. Something worse. Aiden called his head of cybersecurity, 2 additional private investigators, and even a former FBI consultant. For the first time in his life, the billionaire wasn't fighting for shares, assets, or contracts. He was fighting for his son's life. But while Aiden prepared for war, Victoria's mind drifted to a truth she had buried so deep she promised herself she'd never unearth it again. When she found out she was pregnant, she knew whose attention it would attract, the same person who had been controlling her life from the shadows for years. She thought she had outrun him. She thought cutting him off, changing cities, and building a future with Aiden would free her. But monsters don't disappear when you ignore them, they wait. They hunt. And now he had returned for what he believed belonged to him. The investigators reviewed the drone footage frame by frame. One paused the video and zoomed into a small marking on the drone's undercarriage, an insignia almost invisible, but unmistakable to those who knew the world of private security and illegal mercenary groups. This symbol, the consultant whispered, his expression tightening, belongs to a group run by a man named Anton Kale. The name alone sent a shockwave through Victoria so powerful she nearly collapsed. Elena's eyes darted to her. Aiden froze. "You know him?" he asked, voice dangerously soft. Victoria trembled violently. "He was my ex-fiancé," she whispered. The room fell silent. "Before I met you, before everything. Anton controlled my life. He wasn't just possessive. He was dangerous. He wanted an heir, his heir. When I left him, he swore he'd find me one day, pregnant or not, and take what he believed was his." Aiden felt something split inside him, rage so fierce he had to grip the desk to steady himself. "And you didn't think to tell me this?" Victoria's voice cracked. "He threatened to kill you if I ever spoke your name to anyone. I didn't want you dragged into my past. I thought I could protect you both." The consultant spoke again, tension thick in his voice. "Anton Kale isn't just some jealous ex. He runs one of the most ruthless private mercenary circles in Eastern Europe. The drone means he knows about the baby. If he believes the child is his, he'll come for him," Aiden finished, heart hammering. Victoria shook her head desperately. "But the baby isn't his. He's yours, Aiden. I swear it. He's yours." Aiden didn't doubt that for a moment. The child in the nursery had his eyes, his expression, his blood. But Anton didn't care about truth. He cared about ownership. And he had the power to enforce it. Suddenly Reed burst in again, face pale, breathing hard. "Sir, we have a breach." Everyone jumped to their feet. "What kind of breach?" Aiden demanded. Reed swallowed. "Your home firewall has been hacked from an external IP traced to." He hesitated. Aiden stepped forward. "Say it." "Anton Kale's network." A cold chill slithered down every spine in the room. The baby's cry echoed through the mansion. Elena immediately ran to him. Aiden followed, fear gripping him for the first time in years. When they reached the nursery, Elena held the baby protectively as security scanned every corner. Nothing was physically disturbed. But Reed pointed to the baby monitor. "It's been accessed remotely," he said quietly. "They've been watching him. They know his sleep patterns, his feeding schedule, the room layout." Victoria staggered backward, clasping her hand over her mouth. Aiden's fury erupted. "No more hiding. No more running. We protect him now." He ordered the baby moved to a hidden panic room built into the mansion, a luxury feature he had installed years ago but never imagined using for anything other than corporate threats. The room, reinforced with steel and biometric locks, became the safest place in the entire estate. Elena entered with the baby, her expression a mixture of fear and fierce determination. "I won't leave his side," she said. Aiden nodded. "You're the only person I trust right now." Victoria stepped forward, tears blurring her vision. "Aiden, please, believe me when I say I tried to stop this. Anton doesn't forgive. He doesn't forget. He thinks every woman in his life is property. And any child they have is his legacy." Aiden turned to her slowly. "He believes my son belongs to him?" Victoria nodded. "Yes. He'll do anything to take him." Before Aiden could respond, an alarm blared through the entire estate. Lights flashed red. Security scrambled. Reed shouted from the hall, "Unauthorized drone swarm approaching from the east side, 10 units, possibly more." The monitors showed multiple drones descending toward the penthouse windows, fast, aggressive, coordinated. This wasn't surveillance anymore. It was the beginning of a kidnapping attempt. Aiden yelled, "Lock down the estate." Shutters slammed shut over windows. Steel barriers rose around the property. Guards took positions. Victoria hid behind Aiden, shaking uncontrollably. Elena held the baby tighter, humming to calm him even as her own heart pounded like a drum. But Aiden noticed something on the screen, a detail no one else saw at first. One drone wasn't aimed at the nursery, or the doors. It hovered in front of the main camera, holding a small tablet screen, displaying a message. A message from Anton Kale himself. Billionaire. Woman. Maid. Enjoy your last night with my heir. I'm coming. Elena's breath hitched. Victoria collapsed into sobs. Aiden's eyes turned to steel. And the baby, oblivious to the storm forming outside, slept peacefully in her arms. The twist wasn't that Victoria hid the pregnancy. It wasn't even that someone was watching. The real twist, the dangerous one, was this. Anton Kale wasn't after Aiden's money. He wasn't after Victoria. He wanted the baby. And he believed the child was his blood, his legacy. And his to claim. Aiden lifted his gaze toward the dark windows and whispered the promise that would define the battle ahead. Over my dead body. The mansion descended into a fortress-like silence, the kind that stretches so thin it feels ready to snap at any moment. Outside, the drone swarm circled like mechanical vultures marking their territory. Inside, Aiden stood in the dimly lit hallway outside the panic room, his mind a storm of fear, fury, and responsibility. He had fought business empires, corporate betrayals, lawsuits, and hostile takeovers, but never in his life had he faced a threat aimed at his blood, his newborn child. Elena sat inside the steel-reinforced safe room, rocking the baby gently, whispering calming words because he could sense the tension despite being only hours old. Victoria stood behind Aiden, trembling, afraid to breathe too loudly. The security team monitored the grounds, weapons ready, while the cybersecurity crew worked through firewalls burning red with intrusion attempts. For a moment, the entire world felt suspended, every breath held, every heartbeat echoing like a countdown. Then, the inevitable happened. Aiden's phone buzzed. A video call request. The name on the screen, Anton Kale. The room froze. Reed looked at Aiden, eyes tight with alarm. "Sir, if you answer." "I'm answering," Aiden said, voice hard. He accepted the call. The screen flickered to life, revealing a man with icy blue eyes, slick black hair, and a smirk so confident it sent a chill through the room. "Aiden Blackwell," Anton said casually, as if greeting an old friend. "Congratulations. I see you've discovered my gift." Aiden clenched his jaw. "Your gift? That child isn't yours." Anton chuckled softly. "Genetics are irrelevant to men like us. Power is what matters. And the woman you're protecting made one simple mistake: she belonged to me before she belonged to you. Everything she does, everything she carries, everything she creates is an extension of my legacy." Victoria's breath hitched as she whispered, "You're insane." Anton's smile widened. "Insane? No, my dear. Determined. Persistent. Loyal to what is mine." His gaze turned cold. "Bring me the baby, Aiden. Or I will take him by force." Aiden's voice dropped to a deadly whisper. "You'll have to walk over my corpse." Anton leaned closer to the camera. "If you insist." He snapped his fingers. And the estate lights went black. Panic exploded through the mansion. Emergency lights flickered. Security screens blinked red. Reed shouted orders. Guards sprinted to positions. Elena clutched the baby tighter as the panic room's backup generator hummed alive. Victoria collapsed to her knees, hands over her mouth. Aiden's pulse roared like thunder in his ears. "Backup systems, on," he ordered. But Reed's face drained. "Sir, someone's inside the system. They're overriding our internal grid." Aiden's heart dropped. This wasn't just an outside attack. This was infiltration. Physical. Close. Too close. A loud metallic thud echoed from the far west corridor. Then another. And another. Like someone, or something, was forcing its way through the mansion's reinforced doors. The guards rushed toward the noise. Gunshots erupted. Shouts followed. The sound of bodies hitting marble rang through the halls. Reed looked at Aiden, panic flashing across his hardened expression. "Sir, they're here." Aiden ran. Not away from danger, but toward the panic room. Toward his son. The baby cried softly, feeling the tension vibrate through the air. Elena held him protectively, tears forming but her spirit unbroken. "It's okay, little one," she whispered. "Your daddy is here. He's going to protect you." But before Aiden reached the panic room door, something moved behind him, a shadow. Footsteps. Heavy. Slow. Calculated. Aiden turned and froze as a tall, muscular man stepped from the darkness, one of Anton's mercenaries, dressed in tactical black armor, eyes hidden behind a visor. "Step aside," the man ordered. Aiden didn't move. "The baby stays with me." The mercenary raised a stun baton. "Move." Aiden charged. Two bodies collided with bone-cracking force. Aiden wasn't a trained fighter like the mercenary, but he fought like a father, wild, relentless, fueled by terror and love. They slammed into walls, overturned furniture, shattered glass, and grappled in brutal chaos. At one point, the mercenary pinned Aiden to the floor, baton pressed to his throat. But Elena, hearing the struggle, cracked open the panic room door just enough to see what was happening. Her eyes widened. She grabbed the nearest object, a heavy metal fire extinguisher, and with a trembling breath, she swung it with all her strength. The mercenary dropped instantly. Aiden coughed, chest heaving, eyes wide. Elena trembled violently, the extinguisher clattering to the floor. I am sorry, I had to." "You saved my life," Aiden said breathlessly. "And his." Before they could catch their breath, Reed shouted from the hall, "Aiden, we found something." Everyone rushed back to the security hub. Reed pointed at a new feed he had hacked into. Anton's drone fleet had cameras inside their own operation. On the screen, Anton stood on a rooftop across the city, glaring into a camera. "Blackwell," he growled. "This isn't over." But then something unexpected happened. Another figure stepped into frame. An older man. A face Aiden recognized instantly. His father's former CFO, the one who vanished years ago after embezzling millions. Anton shoved him forward. "Tell him," Anton hissed. The man trembled. I gave him everything, records, revenge plans, things that would hurt your family." Aiden's breath caught. This wasn't about Victoria. Or even the baby. Anton wanted to destroy the Blackwell Empire, piece by piece, generation by generation. And stealing the heir was the final strike he believed would shatter Aiden forever. But suddenly, sirens blared in the distance. Helicopters thundered overhead. A red laser dot appeared on Anton's forehead. Then another. Then three more. A voice shouted through a speaker, "Anton Kale. Surrender. You are surrounded by federal authorities." Victoria gasped. How did they find him?" Reed smiled for the first time in hours. "Your consultant sent the drone ID to Interpol. They've been trying to catch Anton for years." He showed his face. That was enough. Anton screamed into the sky as agents swarmed the rooftop. He was tackled to the ground, cuffed, dragged away as he roared like a wild animal. Victoria crumpled into tears. Elena held the baby close. Aiden closed his eyes, relief flooding him in waves. Hours later, when peace finally settled over the mansion, Aiden entered the nursery. Elena placed the baby in his arms. Aiden held his son close, kissed his forehead, and whispered, "You're safe now. I promise." Victoria stepped into the doorway. "Aiden. I'm so sorry." Her voice broke. "For everything." Aiden looked at her. "You should have trusted me." "I know," she whispered. "But thank you, for saving him." Aiden shook his head softly. "He saved all of us." Elena smiled, tears in her eyes. The baby cooed, stretching tiny fingers toward Aiden's face. The danger was gone. The truth was out. And for the first time since his arrival into this world, the Blackwell heir slept in peace, surrounded by the people who would protect him forever. If this story pulled you in, made your heart race, or kept you hooked till the final twist, then don't leave without hitting that subscribe button. Your support helps me bring more emotional, suspense-filled stories straight to your screen. Comment below, what shocked you the most, Victoria's secret, Anton's attack, or Elena's bravery? Like, share, and subscribe so you never miss the next jaw-dropping episode. Tell me your city in the comments, I read every single one.